tell the audience a little bit about what you do.
Well, my name is Nicki Keohohou, and I live in beautiful Kailua, Hawaii. And I started the Direct Selling World Alliance about 21 years ago and started our Coach Excellence School about 15 years ago. And I've been speaking professionally for many, many years. So I'm very blessed that I get to do what I love, and I love the direct selling profession. And I have met so many interesting people, including you.
That's so kind of you. So is it true, like I was looking at your bio and it said that you were named one of the top 30 female entrepreneurs in America, right?
Yes, yes.
Wow, that's awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you. I've had some beautiful things, recognition over the years, just by doing what I love and getting to be with people. And I'm just glad I've had these experiences.
Mm-hmm. So I'm curious about that. Like, there's a ton of, female entrepreneurs in the world or even in America, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so looking back, like, were there any, behaviors, like traits, skill sets that really help you achieve that?
I think the biggest thing is a desire to be of service to others. And to not give up, because as an entrepreneur, there are times that things are hard. You're in charge of making things happen and making money and taking care of a lot of people and all the rest of it. But I guess that I learned, my dad was an entrepreneur. It's been in my family forever. And I think we just learned that you just have to stay with it and keep thinking and creating and be ahead of the curve, to not let things run you over or take you over. You just got to find another way. And so traits probably are creativity, work ethic, finding joy in whatever it is that you're doing, making a difference for people, being of service to others, and not sweating the small stuff, letting your life be run by all the things that happen to you is not a good way to get over things that are coming at you.
I see. So you mentioned your father was an entrepreneur. Like, did he do the same thing you're doing right now, or was he doing something different?
My dad was an interesting man. My father was Native American from the Umatilla tribe. And he was a very hardworking person. And he married my mother, who was fun and creative and always a positive attitude and a find a way person. And she stayed with him through some very hard times to create a very, very big business in the Pacific Northwest. And he did it over a period of years, and he never gave up. And wow. I was just telling my sister the other day, the dad told me one time, he goes, we did our first million this year. Wow. And I said, Dad, does that make us like millionaires? This is so exciting. Now we're millionaires. He goes, oh no, Nicki, you still have to pay all the expenses out of that millions of dollars. So no, you're not really a millionaire, but it's a start.
Right.
And that was so good for me to understand what it takes. It's not just how much money you make, it's how much money you profit.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's I think we kind of lose sight of things, like the profitability kind of reminds me of the book Profit First, figuring out how you can generate profit. So what kind of business did your dad do? You mentioned he ran grew a really big company.
He started off in selling surplus wire out of the back end of his truck. He bought it from it's called Hanford in the state of Washington, a nuclear plant, and they had leftovers and things. And he bought all that at a discount, and then turned around and drove to different businesses and sold it. And that's where he started. And he also would catch salmon. So he had his salmon in the back of the truck and his wire in the back of the truck. And that's where he started. And then he went from there. He started a small little shop, and then has built it in, I think there's like 12 branches in Eastern Washington. We're the largest family-owned electrical, plumbing, irrigation, lighting appliances, cabinets, all those household things except lumber. And it's still there and doing well.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, it's so crazy. Like I was reading a book, and it talked a little bit about or it's called Built to Last. And so what by Jim Collins. So one of the things that he shared was that like there are many different companies, like all the biggest companies in the world, they didn't have like an amazing product or like amazing idea in the beginning. You know, they were like still scratching their heads of what they wanted to do. Like Sony at one point was reselling stuff. You know, they were not even like a TV or audio sort of company. They were our products, they were focused on like reselling products, you know, so that kind of reminds me of that.
It does. Built to last. And very few second generation businesses make it. And we're now on our third generation and doing well.
Wow, that's incredible. So what have you found? Because a lot of companies don't last that long, right? They usually have a very short cycle. So I mean, what's kind of like the secret that you guys have in your, you know, family to help the company last generations?
You know, it's funny because I think we were pretty innovative and we realized there was nobody that got a free ride. All the kids at some point worked in the business. And I think that part of that was, you know, that you do whatever it takes. Nothing's going to be handed to you. So everybody worked hard and we understood that we all had our roles. And that's another thing. Family business is different. The dynamics are different. So you better know how to communicate with each other and how to appreciate the differences and know that everybody kind of has their own way. You got to keep reinventing yourself though, because as you reinvent yourself, what happens is you realize that you can't keep doing the same old thing over and over. And that's with DSWA, the same thing. We had to keep creating and finding new trainings and new products and new approaches and new associates or partners within the business so that we could be unique and stand out in the crowd. And I think the other big thing is you got to do the right things. People, if they don't trust you, they don't want to do business with you. And I know, like my father, my mother were very trustworthy people, and they instilled that in us. And so you can't burn people and expect to have a name for yourself that's going to last for generations. And so, yeah, just keep doing the right thing and be authentic and honest. And, you know, we have 5 principles, and we started these 5 principles with our coach school, but it really is the 5 principles that our business is built on. And it spells the word STAIR, an acronym, STAIR, down your page. The S stands for service, must be of service to people. The T is for trust. You must be trustworthy and develop that over time. The STA is authentic. Be real, be yourself. Don't try to be somebody you're not. And the I is for integrity, doing the right things even when people aren't looking. And the R is for respect. If you live by those 5 principles, everything is a bit easier because life happens and people know who you are and they're going to know how you're going to think, what you're going to do, because they trust that you're always going to do the right thing. I think that's important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you nailed it with the stairs, the stair. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. I love that acronym. So I'm kind of curious. So like, you know, I often I kind of think back to my own life, you know, like sometimes like luckily for me, like my parents were very they didn't like push me to do the same thing they did, you know, and I feel like a lot of parents get caught up in that. They want their kids to be the people that they weren't, you know, so they're like, hey, like I want you to do the same thing that I do, but better, you know, I want you to go into the same profession that I'm in, but do it better than me. So so for you, like, did you ever feel that with your dad? You know, did he ever
Never.
like, you know, and I noticed that your daughter is also working with you, you know, in entrepreneurship. So like, how do you balance that, giving them the freedom to like pursue what they want, but also like, you know, also like trying to influence them, you know, and kind of lead them towards the right path?
You know, my dad never told us what we needed to do. I was a teacher. He said, find what you love and what you're good at and stay with it. And both my husband and I were teachers, and we love teaching. And that's what I still do. Is I still do teaching, just not in a school district. And it took us years to make the decision to work in the family business. We decided to do it because it was the right time and there was the right opportunity, and we could make a difference at the time we did it. And when we chose to leave and go on our own, there were no hard feelings, because like my for you and for your family. And if it makes you happy, do it. And so I started in direct selling, and I loved what I did, and I have no regrets about that. And my daughter is a direct seller at heart. She's an entrepreneur at heart. My son is an entrepreneur, and he owns his own company. I think it's just in our blood.
Ah.
And so whatever that looks like to you, I wouldn't be disappointed if my son said, "Hey, I want to go work for this company and do this." I'd want to make sure he thought about what were the pros and the cons, but then it's his decision because it's his life. So we never were pushed in any one direction.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's great, because you hear it all the time. Like
Mm.
some kids, they, have been influenced and pushed by their parents to do something, and then years later they find themselves unhappy in that job or profession, and then they have that resentment towards their parents. And so I think
Yes.
as parents, it's important to kind of give your kids that freedom to pursue what they want and let them live their
Mhm.
lives, which is
Mhm.
can be hard, because if you really want them to, do something or kind of guide them towards a specific path, it's hard to balance.
It is, and you know something, I think back because I wanted to be a teacher, and I went into that profession, and I had a friend that was a roommate, and she also was in education, and both of her parents had been teachers and said, "This is the best thing for you. You'll be really good at it. It comes by you naturally. You'll get your summers off with your kids." I mean, it really pushed her in that direction. And her senior year, she did her September experience, and then you have like an internship that you do. And she said, "I hate kids. I don't like this. This is not fun." So she had to go a few more years of school to change what she was doing, and her parents were disappointed. But you know what? She was happy with her decision.
Mhm.
So I think with I love being a parent. I love being a grandparent. And I think the most important thing is to empower your children, your grandchildren, to
Mhm.
make good choices.
Right.
And they're their choices. If we tell people what to do versus ask questions, then we kind of own the responsibility of that choice along with them. But they really fall back and say, "Well, you're the one that told me to do it."
Mhm.
And they don't have to take responsibility. And I don't think that's a good thing.
Right. Yeah, that's a great way to look at it.
Mhm.
So, like I actually saw this really interesting article on LinkedIn the other day, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it. So, basically, the article was saying how women who climb the ranks in their profession, the higher they go, the more guilty they feel, because they feel like they still need to be a caregiver. That's the perception in their heads that by society, that they need to be a caregiver. They need to spend more time with their families. They're spending too much time at work. And so they feel guilty. So, like, did you ever feel that way? Because you're very successful, you really are up there, in terms of entrepreneurship. So, did you ever feel that way?
That's an interesting comment, because that is one of the main reasons women, particularly in direct selling, leave, is because of
Mhm.
that guilt. They feel guilty when they're working their business, thinking they should be with their family. And
Mhm.
then when they're with their family, they think they should be working their business. So that guilt just eats away at them. You can't hold on to guilt. You've got to be present where you are in the moment and know that this is where I'm supposed to be. So I really didn't feel guilty because I included my children, whatever it was I was doing. At one
Mm.
stage in my life, I had a modeling school and a gym, and my kids were there and they worked with us. And my children worked from when their friends were all out playing. They played sports and did all that, but they also worked. They had some responsibilities. And I think that's part of why they have such a good work ethic. So I didn't feel the guilt because they were kind of with us.
Mm. Awesome. So do you think that's kind of like the solution is like get your kids involved in what you do, or like, is there something else that they need to overcome too?
Mm.
That feeling.
I think that's part of it is making sure that they're earning things, not just handed things. By the way, people do things for their kids out of guilt. They buy them all the toys, they buy them the fancy car, they give them all this money to go do things with their friend. And we didn't do that. They earned. And so they found out what the dollar was worth. A lot of kids think just because you have this little card, you go to this little thing and you take money out. And it's like a really good deal. Just you got money in there, just grab it. No, I think that they need to learn some being responsible and what it takes to earn money. So I think that's part of it. The other part was I chose, and it is a decision, to not live with that guilt because I knew what I was giving them by living the life we did, and they knew what was in it for them. We always planned our family vacation. When we do this, then the family gets to do that. Where would you like to go for a holiday? What would you like to have added onto our house? That we're doing. This is our family business. We always called it our family business. So they were part of that.
Yeah, I like that. That's what I want to do, eventually is be cognizant of like not trying to push my kids into doing what I want them to do, but getting them involved and kind of seeing, like, being there with me when I'm on my, meetings and, business meetings, or like doing, listen to me while I'm on my podcast, things like that. I think it's fun. They could just kind of like learn and, I could teach them a few things, while they're with me.
I want to tell you a fun story because it really was a good experience. Grace and I were invited to New York City to meet with a very large company. And she said, Mom, are you going to do the program? I said, no, Grace, it's time for you. This is your chance. Let's talk about it, get their slides together, and you get to do it. And she was kind of like, and I said, you're ready. So we're in this big board meeting with all these big wigs and sitting around the table. And I'm watching her up in the front and what she's doing. And I was so proud. And we did good, and we nailed the deal. And after everybody left the room, it was just she and I in there. And I said, Grace, you know what is strange? When I was watching you up there, I was remembering when you were a little girl, you used to take your bears and your dollies and your stuffed animals and set them all at a table in the dining room and run your meetings. And I walked in there one time and I heard you say, just a moment, you all have things you can work on right now, but I need to take this call. And she went over to the phone and she was talking to somebody. I mean, she was like 7, talking to somebody about this, and puts the phone down and said, now, how did you do on your project while I was gone? I mean, it was just interesting to watch her. And I said, Grace, what you were doing as a little girl, I saw you doing as an adult. And she said, Mom, you know what's weird? I saw the same thing.
Wow.
I was thinking back to those meetings that I used to have, just like you did, but I was running them, and I did it today. And I was so proud of her in that moment. She earned that. She worked on it for her lifetime. And, she's very successful, and on her own, very successful today because of the experience that she had from a very young age.
That's incredible. That's such a touching story. So were there any times where, like, maybe she felt unconfident about something, and then you kind of felt like, oh man, should I help? And then you kind of like want her to make her own mistake too. Like, were there situations like that? And like, what did you do and how did you handle that?
I have a very good story around that. One time she was working in Dallas and I was in Los Angeles, and she called me up and she said, Mom, I did bad this morning. I did bad. And I was working with all these corporate people, and it's different than working with the field. And I didn't, well, actually, 2 of the corporate people came and talked to me afterwards. And they told me, this is a different audience, Grace. These are all corporate people, not field people. And they loved her enough and cared about her enough to give her these tips. But she said, I must have been really bad. Mom, can you come and just do this for me? And I said, Grace, if I go and do that for you, you probably will never do it again. I can't do that to you. I want you to be prepared, make the adjustments that they suggested, and and go ahead, and tomorrow will be a new day, and you'll get to show up very differently. And, you know, in Hawaii, we wear very flowy, colorful clothes, and that's what she was wearing. And the field loves that, but they were all in suits and navy blue and black. And so she went out that night and she bought a suit. She changed her hair from it being long and flowy, pulled it back, and she just adjusted really, really well. And in that city, I have a lot of prayer warriors, people that are like really prayer warriors, and people were praying for her and with her. And the next day, she did just a beautiful job and nailed another event. Now, I think if I would have rescued her, I really believe she wouldn't have done it again. And this way, she faced that and she showed herself that she could, and she could adjust to whatever situation. A very, very good learning experience. And that company was one of our biggest clients for many, many years. So I know that sometimes facing the things that are the hardest for us teaches many, many lessons. And my mom taught me that. You know, I'd been a competitive diver, and I did this dive, and I went straight up, and I came straight down on the diving board, and the tooth came out my mouth, and blood everywhere, and I'm hanging on the diving board. My mother jumps the fence. Let me take you to the hospital. I said, Mom, if I don't get on that board now, I'm never going to do it again. I just need one more dive. And, you know, today they probably wouldn't do it. It was bloody. And then my coach said, yes, they could do a dive. And I did a dive, and I can dive today. I have no fear. I learned from her. Things pass down from generation to generation to generation if we are aware of it. What were the good things that we learned? We all have some things we go, oh man, that wasn't such a good lesson. But we have lots of good lessons. Pass those good lessons on in your family heritage and watch what happens. You'll empower people.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful, because I think as parents, sometimes you just, you know, you don't want your kids to get hurt. You know, you're protective, and I think the natural instinct is to jump in and help them. You know,
rescue.
and rescue, yeah. And so it takes some sort of discipline and understanding the bigger picture. Is like, okay, well, if I jump in and help them, what is that going to teach them? You know, is that going to really help their confidence at all? And really thinking that through, asking the right questions, right? So I think that's important to figure out what are the great things, the great lessons that you want to teach from, you know, your parents, and then, you know, kind of leave out the bad things.
You know, I look back at my mom. I remember coming home from school one day, and I was kind of sad. And my mom goes, Nicki, what's going on? And I said, Mom, why is Susie so mean? She's mean to me, and she's mean to all the kids. And she said, Nicki, you got to ask yourself a better question. And I said, what? She said, ask yourself a better question that will give you a more positive answer. And I thought for a minute, I said, how can I show her how to be kind to people? So she taught me lessons from a very young age. And I remember also my sisters and brothers, they're all like geniuses. Like, they know what year King Tut died and everything. I could care less. He's dead. It doesn't matter to me in the rest of my life. And I said, Mom, what's wrong with me? I don't want to do studying for 4 hours after school. I want to play baseball, and I want to play tag, and I want to be with my friends. And I said, I'm not interested in being a straight A student. She goes, well, who said you needed to be? And I said, well, I thought because they all were that maybe you thought I should be. She said, when have I ever told you that? When's your dad told you that? I said, well, you never have. She said, don't worry about the things that you're not good at. Focus on your strengths. She said, what are your strengths? And I said, my strengths are people. I get along with everybody. I understand people very well, really quickly. And I know sometimes even what they're thinking. Maybe they're not saying it, but I can just tell by what their body's doing or their facial expressions are doing. She goes, Nicki, you're right. Those are your strengths. Focus on your strengths. Study people. And, you know, I got accredited in coaching. I got accredited at the highest level in behavioral intelligence. I have certification in emotional intelligence. I have always studied those things for my whole life. So I don't worry about my things I'm not so good at. I can hire people to do those things. I just have to have an understanding so I don't get ripped off or somebody do something illegal or something. I got to have some knowledge, but I don't have to know everything. And it isn't even fun for me. What I do is fun. I love my life. What I get to do is joyful. And I don't have to worry about all the rest of this stuff.
Mm. Yeah, strengths are really underrated.
Yes.
You know, like, and I
Yes.
feel like I don't know if school has something to do with it or parenting, because I think in parenting, some parents or maybe even many parents, they know what their deficiencies are, right? And so maybe they
Mm,
want their kids to try to be good at their deficiencies so that
mm,
way they can feel better about themselves. So maybe that has to do some with has to do with it. Or maybe even school, there's like different subjects and there's a certain passing grade that you have to meet. And like, for example, myself, I'm not good at math. I was terrible at science. And so like I didn't want to fail my classes. So I had to like work at those, to get those up.
mhm,
But I really excelled at, like English, history, psychology, the people stuff versus
mhm,
all the sciences and the math. So maybe school has to do with it, but yeah, I think society, we kind of teach people and tell people that they need to get better at their weaknesses, but the strengths
mm,
are where it's at. We need to teach people that, hey, you got to double
mm.
down, triple down your strengths.
Yes, yes. And because if your whole focus is on things that you feel you're not very good at, that's how you see yourself. And I always saw myself with confidence because I knew what I was good at. And I just stayed in that field and hired people who could do the
Mhm.
rest.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, yeah, that's something that I'm, wanting to do too in my business. Once I get to the point right now, like when you start, it's like you're doing all the things yourself, right? And then
Yes.
once you start to hit a certain level, you can start hiring specific types of people that will do things that you don't enjoy or you're not good at. So that way
Hmm.
you can double down on the things that you're good at and what you enjoy.
Hmm. It's like salespeople who are very good with sales and building relationships, and they're doing their own bookkeeping.
Mhm.
That's taking them away from what they're good at and building the business. And the bookkeeping is important. It's maintenance, but they don't have to do it. They just have to know how to read a financial statement, to
Mhm.
look at a balance sheet, to know profit and loss. They got to know enough, but they
Mhm.
don't have to know everything. Me sitting behind a QuickBooks screen all day would not be a good use of my time.
Yeah, no, I can definitely relate. So that kind of ties into like personality types, like understanding what your
Yes.
personality is and your strengths. So like, in coaching, like have you noticed there is like a big link between personality and like coaching, like coaching style?
Oh, yes. In fact, that's in our school. That's one of the subjects that we teach because how you coach people, it's not the exact same for everybody. The questions that you would ask a dominant or a direct, decisive person are very different than that you would ask a steady, more reserved, people-oriented person. So you've got to understand to quickly be able to identify that in people so you know how to relate to them. I think that's one of the most important skills, to understand behavioral intelligence, how people show up, how to work with them most effectively, because it's different for everyone. And I think people's behaviors also adjust over years and over
Mm.
situations. We do a behavioral assessment for all of our students in the coach school that comes with the school. And one of the things that is in there is, what is your basic style? That's how you show up every day. What is your environmental style? Because in your environment, whether that be at home or at work, may be different than your basic. And so I got to know who I'm dealing with when I'm dealing with people.
Mhm. So what kind of personality test do you guys use?
We created one with a company that's very well known for this, and we did it specifically for direct selling. But we
Hmm.
also have a leadership one. We have several. We have it in Spanish, we have it in English. We created those because we feel it is such an important skill for people to learn. And I think it's overlooked many times. When people start in a direct selling company, they spend a lot of time, teaching about their products and, a lot of things around, if it's a nutrition company, around nutrition and health, they teach a lot of those things, but that isn't going to do you any good if you don't know how to relate to people. You got to build rapport first. So I think it's been missed in a lot of companies, and we wanted to fill that gap. We have one of our clients in Australia that every time they hire a new employee, internal staff, they do a behavioral assessment on that person. And then it goes out to everybody, their results. So the other staff knows how to relate to that person the best, how to get and how to get the most out of that individual, and how to make them feel good about being part of the company. See, there are certain styles that like public recognition. They want to be up on the stage, or they want to be in front of the group and be recognized. There are other people, they would just die to have that. Send me a little note, a nice little card, and thank me for who I am, my being. And they'll save it, and that'll mean the world to them, but they don't show it to anybody. It's only for them. So you got to know how to address all the different people.
Right. So besides the current one you guys are using, like the ones that, you created, are there like, other personality tests that you really, like, that you found really accurate or effective as far as like, in the business world?
Well, people use all different ones. There are colors, there are animals, there are birds, there are flowers. I mean, there's all these different ones that people have used. They're all off of the same similar platform with DISC, D-I-S-C, but they changed it all up. So when people don't know if I'm a red penguin or if I'm a blue duck, I mean, it's confusing to people. You just use the same one. Pick one and use it. We believe DISC is the simplest to use, D-I-S-C. And once people find that, they just can stay with it, and everybody's using the same language. There's Myers-Briggs, there's all kinds of different ones that you can get. Simple is the best, because if you have it simple, then people will use it, follow it, and so on.
Right. Yeah, I think DISC is a big one. I've heard great things about DISC, and at one point I took a DISC test. Another one I, have used since I was in high school was Myers-Briggs. That's the one that I kind of grew up with, and I still kind of think about it a lot, and then I also saw this podcast. It's really interesting. There's this CIA agent, and he was doing a podcast, and they asked him, does the CIA use personality tests? And they're like, yeah, of course. And he's like, what we found effective was Myers-Briggs. So I thought that was really interesting. And so do you know
around a long time. It's just a little more complicated than and in our field and the people that we work with, the simplicity is what makes it worthwhile.
Right. Yeah.
I am an ID. The I part of me is the outgoing, people-oriented. The D part of me is very direct and decisive. I have a lot of S. That's the steady person that is reserved and people-oriented. And that I'm very loyal, very family-oriented. That's all part of the S. My low one is the C. And the C is the cautious person, cautious and reserved. That's your accountant. That's your probably, maybe not your lawyer, but they have some C. But I know where my strengths lie. And I also know who I relate best to. I'm surrounded in my own company by a lot of C's, because that's an area where I'm not as good. And so I have people that aren't afraid also. So they're usually CD, which means they'll challenge you in a respectful way, but they'll say, have you thought about this? This is something to consider in that situation. We might want to look at that. They wouldn't say, you're wrong and you don't need to do that. They wouldn't say it like that, because it wouldn't go anywhere. But they understand too, because we've all studied it. They've all taken classes from us.
Right. Yeah, so my personality type, from Myers-Briggs is kind of hovers, back and forth and between, I
Mm-hmm.
guess it comes with the environment. Like if I'm in an environment where I need to be more extroverted, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
INFJ. So I
Mm-hmm.
is the introversion, and then, be E if I'm in if I need to be extroverted. So it kind of
Mm-hmm.
fluctuates. And then N is intuitive. F is the
Mm.
feeling, and then J is, judgment and like being, a little bit more decisive. And so, yeah, and what I found is that like you got to be a little careful with personality tests because you don't want to put yourself into a spot where you are building a self-fulfilling prophecy,
Mm.
where like, oh, I'm this type, so I have to act this way, right? And so I think like when people first start with personality tests, it's like, oh, I need to be this way because that's my personality type.
Mm.
And they need to understand that even within personality types, there's so many variations. I mean, there's 8 billion people in the world and everybody's going to be different and not fit within a
Yes.
specific personality.
Yes. And the other thing is that people sometimes put people in a box.
Mhm.
Once they know that person's style, oh, you're such a C,
Mm.
too many details, you're driving me crazy. Or you're such an I, you're like an airhead. You're so, everything's got to be fun and recognition. All. So they put them in a box, and we all have some of everything.
Mm.
We do. We have some of everything. And at times one comes out more than another. That's just part of life.
Mhm.
It's learning how to adjust to other people.
Right.
You know, I go to see my brother. My brother is C, cautious and numbers oriented. When I go to talk to him, I have my facts. I don't bring in a lot of emotion. I don't waste his time. I just get done what I need to get done, and that's it. And that he's happy. If I said, well, how are the kids doing? And my kids are doing great, it drives him crazy. So I just don't do it. Where my
Right.
other sister, we talk about family and things. I'm here at her house actually in Atlanta today, and we're best friends. We're best friends, and we think alike. If you ever play a game with us, be prepared. Catchphrase or Pictionary or any of those kinds of games, because we just think alike. We're very, very similar. And even though like others are different than us, we just understand them. So we deal with them with how they need to be dealt with. And
Mhm.
everybody's okay with that. The big thing that I say is it's up to us to adjust.
Mhm.
It's up to us to adjust. We can't expect anybody else to adjust to us. They don't know usually. So we're
Mhm.
the ones that must adjust to other people.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It also gives you more power, like more
Mm,
accountability and more control over your own life versus trying to
mm,
blame other people for, problems.
mm.
So yeah, I like that saying. I also noticed that you like a ton of on your Facebook, you have a ton of motivational quotes. You're posting motivational
Yes.
quotes a lot. So like, are there some that just had the biggest impact in your life? Any specific quotes?
Mm. I have so many. It's funny. I was riding in the car with my sister the other day, and she said, Nicki, I want to share some of these quotes that I've saved because I know you're going to love them. And every one of them says, you may have to walk down some roads alone in life, but it's those walks that make us the strongest. And I thought, wow, that is good. Here's another one. Don't look back. You're not going that way. You learn from your past. You can't live in it. I really like this one too. Train your mind to see the good in everything. Positivity is a choice. The happiness of your life depends on the quality of oh, cut it off. But to me, it's on the quality of your questions
Mhm.
and the quality of your vision. I mean, I have tons of them. So I don't know that there's one, but probably the biggest one is the quality of your life is directly related to the quality of your questions.
Mhm.
Because people ask themselves bad questions. Why am I so stupid? Why can't I do this? Why am I not making them more money? You ask yourself all these why questions, you're judging yourself.
Mhm.
And if you judge yourself, you're not going to be in the most positive place you can be. And the other thing that I think is really important is for people to look at how they live. I call it living above the line. See, below the line is blame, shame, and justify. Above the line is responsibility, is to take responsibility for our actions and not look for who we can blame, how we shame ourselves, or justify the reason why we're where we are. Just take responsibility for it and go. So I think there are ways, people learn in metaphors and, and models. So the way I teach is with a lot of models and metaphors, because I want people to learn. And I believe that if we look at our life, at what is going right, what is good, what's beautiful. I looked outside today and the sun's shining. And yes, it's cold. I don't like to be cold. And it's cold, but it's beautiful. The sun and the blue sky and the trees. And I always do that in life. I look for what's right, what's good, what's beautiful. Because if you're focused on what's wrong, what isn't working, and what's ugly, you're like a magnet. You just attract more of the same to yourself. I don't want to attract that.
Yes, I totally agree with you. Having the right questions change your frame of mind, and kind of lets you focus on things that will actually be effective and help your situation. So that being said, though, here's a question, like, how do people ask better questions?
Well, the first part of it is you want to use who, what, when, where, or how questions. They start with who, what, when, where, or how. Why is the one you don't want to use? Because very few people use a why in a positive way. They say, why am I not making more money? Why is she making more money than me? Why did that have to happen to me? Why did I have those parents? And you'll get the answer. You see, your brain has to work 6 to 7 times harder for any question than it will for a statement. So if you ask your question, you're engaging your brain. So we want to ask questions that are going to serve us, not that are going to tear us apart. So I do what's called self-coaching. And I do it throughout the day. I start every day with self-coaching questions before my feet hit the ground. And then before I go to sleep, what you put in your brain the last 45 minutes of every day is critical to your success. So if you're watching murder and God, during the politics on TV, I would never watch TV at night. It was like, these guys are all fighting with each other. I'd be in bed boxing. It's not good. So I just don't watch that or think about all that negative stuff. So like before I get out of bed in the morning, what am I most excited about for today? Now you can ask a question, what do I have to do today? You see the difference? So what am I most excited about for today? Whose life can I make a difference in today? What are the top 3 things that I choose to accomplish today? So I start who can I make smile today? When you start your day that way, you get different results. So throughout the day, maybe I just had someone that I was on the phone with and they were a poop and they just were mean and ugly and whatever. So how can I release that conversation? What do I choose to focus on right now that will give me better results? Who is somebody kind and thoughtful that I could call and maybe bring some cheer into their life and them into mine? So I can reverse things when they don't go right. Then at the end of the day, what am I looking forward to tomorrow? Whose life did I make a difference in today? What brought me the most joy that I accomplished today? Whose life can I bring joy to tomorrow? You move into the next day thinking about it in a different way. And the results are phenomenal. People ask me all the time, Nicki, why are you so happy? You're always happy. I went to my old fart class reunion and then there were a bunch of oldie moldies there. And this guy came up to me and he goes, you're still the same. And I said, yeah, I'm the same person. He goes, you are always happy in high school. You're still happy. I said, well, that's a choice. I choose to be happy. And he said, God, I thought, in high school, maybe you were on drugs. You were always so happy. I said, oh no, I never smoked a cigarette. I never did a drug, and I never drank alcohol. No, that would not have been the reason. I choose to be happy. And you have more happiness in your life when you bring joy to other people. Just make that part of your day. Who can I bring joy to today? You'll feel different.
So it seems like, you have really built a habit around asking good questions, right? It's kind of like your lifestyle. So if someone, currently is not asking them those types of questions, the questions that are going to really help their lives, how could they get started? Like what are kind of like baby steps that they can take in order to build that discipline and habit?
Be conscious. We have a lot of people that are unconscious in our world. They got stuck in these habits and weren't aware. We have a CD on our website, dswa.org. It's called Self-Coaching, and it's a very simple one to do. We teach about self-coaching in our first level of our coach school. And you can find that on the events page at dswa.org. You make a choice that what you're doing probably is not serving you. But by the way, if you're saying those kinds of things like, why am I so stupid? You're going to pass that on to your kids. They're hearing you say that. Why was I so dumb? Why did I fall for that? Those kinds of questions are going to be embedded in your children's brain because you used them for so long. I don't want to be that kind of a model for my children and my grandchildren. So I really chose to do this differently. And I started from a very young age, but I didn't even know what it was. And we made up the term self-coaching. Now it's used other places, but we started using that term 20-some years ago. And I didn't realize it was different. Even enlightened vocabulary, I didn't realize how I had learned how to reframe things, to not use certain words so that I felt different. Like when people say, I'm exhausted. By the way, when you say I am, whatever you say after that follows you. It's glued to you. It's like a magnet. So be careful with what you say when you say I am, that it's something that's positive. When you say I'm exhausted, I don't ever say that. I don't care if I haven't slept all night. I'm not going to say I'm exhausted. I learned how to reframe things. I have more than enough energy to do what I need to do today. I create energy, and there's ways to do that. So you reframe the things that aren't serving you, like saying, I hate doing this. I can say, I prefer to do that. There's a weight to these words. There's a weight to them. And sometimes that weight of those words sucks our energy dry, and we don't even know what's causing it. Listen to yourself. Have somebody else listen to you. Maybe you're the but king or queen. Oh, I had a pretty good week, but I didn't do this. I had a pretty good year last year, but we didn't make very much money. So you discount whatever good you said in front of that word but, and you don't even know that you're wearing the but crown. You're the person that keeps saying that kind of stuff, and you don't even know you're doing it. Burn that crown. It's being conscious. And know that everything that you say, you're influencing somebody that heard that. I don't want them to think it's okay to do that to themselves.
Right. Yeah, it really reminds me of a book called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And one of the things he says is to be conscious, but be an observer. Observe your own thoughts and don't judge them. Just be a watcher. Just watch your thoughts go by, and you'll start to see the negative ones. And so from what I'm understanding, it seems like it's very similar, but watch your words, be an observer of what words come out of your mouth, and don't judge it, but just be conscious. And then, that will kind of lead you towards the right path.
You know what though? See, everything starts with our thoughts. So he's right on with this. Then the most important thought is the current thought, whatever you're thinking now. And you see, thoughts lead to feelings. So if you're feeling bad about something, it probably started with a thought. And then your feelings lead to either action or inaction. And action or inaction leads to the results you have in life. And when people are having challenges, they go to try to fix the results. No, they got to look at their thoughts, because those thoughts are going to make an impact on what are the words that are going to come out of your mouth. That also causes the feelings.
Right.
So it's really being aware. And I think in life everybody's so busy. And by the way, I don't say I'm busy. I say I have a full life. It feels very differently. But our world is moving so fast that we forget to pay attention to how we're showing up. And in reality, if we don't know how we're showing up, we may be doing some self-sabotage and not even know it.
Right. Yeah. So how many people do you think, like, because, you don't hear this being taught at schools, like you don't hear this in the mainstream media, you don't hear people talking about this really. Like you have to kind of search it, you got to go online and type in like self-development, and then, you start to hear these things. So how many people do you think are going through life like that, where they're not asking themselves the right questions? They're not.
Oh, I can tell you it's the majority of the people. The majority of the people have not been taught. That's why when we started Coach Excellence School for direct sellers, we realized there were lots of other areas where this same information could impact a lot more people. So, and because I was a teacher, I knew what an influence teachers had over children. So we started, Coach Excellence School for educators. And then we realized ministers, they're doing all this counseling and have 2 hours of training and counseling, whereas coaching is a lot faster. So what we realized was, okay, we need to get to these ministry leaders. They're working with the youth, they're working with the parents, the grandparents. So we have Coach Excellence School for ministry leaders. And then we'd have somebody come to a coach school and they'd go, my husband has got to hear this. So we started Coach Excellence School for couples. So it is expanding based on a need, and we're hearing and seeing there is a need in our world. And executives, Coach Excellence School for executives, because sometimes they're in their own little world and they think I'm the boss, so I just am supposed to tell people what to do. We're teaching people not to think for themselves when all we do is tell them what to do. When we ask for their opinion on something, or a reason for what made you decide to do it that way, without judgment, comes from a place of curiosity, no judgment. If you ask, you might be enlightened to find out there really was a logical reason that you didn't see. But because you asked a question, you honored them to feel that they could express their reasoning behind it without defending themselves. There's places to use this everywhere.
Yeah, it's such a huge need in the world. One of the things I have heard is that we've really overprescribed people with antidepressants in the US,
Yes.
and people are struggling mentally. And so I kind of wonder, like, man, if they're taught some of the things, that you're talking about, which is like asking the right questions, observing your thoughts, observing your words, how many more people would be, happier without needing antidepressants? It's like, it's some, like that's something I think about sometimes.
It's our world has a lot of people that have become dependent on pills or prescriptions versus using our own mind for what we can. I had something happen recently and I broke my femur, and I went into a rehab because my home has stairs and I couldn't really go home at that time. So they put me into this nursing home. And the third day I was there, this lady comes upstairs from social work and she goes, well, now how are you dealing with the depression? And I said, well, I don't have it. I don't let it in. And I kind of laughed because I was like, what made her think I was going to be depressed? Well, I guess it's the norm. I found out later. And she said, well, let me just say to you, it is most unusual that someone doesn't have depression that comes into a place like this, that was living a full life before this. Wow. And I said, well, that's too bad that they don't know how to get out of that. And she said, well, what do you do? And I said, well, I say better things to myself. I ask myself better questions. I focus on what's beautiful in my life and where I'm blessed, what I'm grateful for. I I think differently, probably. She said, well, when you get better, will you come back here and teach your staff? I said, not only would I teach your staff, I feel that the patients, the residents here don't know these things. So they're falling asleep at the dinner table. They sleep all day. They don't know how to get out of that situation. And giving them another pill may not be the answer. There could be a better way. And I thought, wow, there's a whole nother vertical market that I never thought about. I'm running out of time.
Right.
So I got to teach other people to do this. But it is like interesting to see, the look on her face was so funny. It was just shocking to her. But what I know is that there's a lot of opportunity to make a difference in our world. And we have so many people that are feeling stuck and angry and all these other things, and they don't know how to get out of it. And we all can be examples.
Right.
How to see the world differently.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. So, I was recently in Hawaii. So, I went back in February, went to Maui, and I actually got married in Maui back in 2019. And so I just feel really honestly different whenever I'm in Hawaii. I just feel like, when like you feel like it's a perfect match for you, like something's a perfect match for you, it just kind of like hits you in your gut and and you feel in your heart. That's how I feel about Hawaii. So like one of my goals is to eventually buy a house in Hawaii where I can live a few months out of the year. Cause I just feel like it just fits me, like I'm a Cancer, so like the water, I enjoy water and being surrounded by water. And then I also like the culture and the feeling there. So I just felt like I'm meant to live there, It's kind of hard to explain. But I'm also like, whenever I'm there, I kind of feel a little concerned because I kind of see the prices, like, whoa, the cost of living is really high. I think Hawaii is the number one highest cost of living in the US. And then I kind of do the math. I'm like, okay, well, the biggest industry there is tourism, and like tourism, it pays decent, but it's not like an engineer, you're not paying like, you're not getting paid like a lawyer. And so now how do people even survive out there? Like multiple jobs or like, I mean, what is your kind of sense of how Hawaiians are doing in Hawaii?
That's an interesting question because I do watch that and I do care about that. And yes, it is expensive. You do things a little differently there. One thing, it's a lot of family, and many times it's 3 and 4 generations living in the same household. A family takes care of family. If somebody goes to Costco and they buy a big thing of tomatoes, they split it up between the households if they're in different households. I think a big part of what it is we don't need a whole lot. We live in such a beautiful place. The toys and games and we'd rather be outside, in the yard, watering plants, and people share. Like our neighbor has a big mango tree, and they just bring over bags of mango and put them on our doorstep. Well, we have grapefruit and limes and pomegranates and bananas, and we take things over to them. People are very conscious about other people. And you don't have heat bills at all. We don't have air conditioning. We just have the trade winds. We just open our louvered windows and the wind blows through. So there's ways that you save money because you're not spending it on other things. So, and we're not as such a materialistic place. The people that are really the local people, and my husband was there all his life till he went to college, and then we got married and lived in the mainland. But when he was raised by his great-great-grandmother, and they didn't have running water. He went and got buckets of water with his grandma. And, they didn't have outdoor shower. I mean, they had outdoor shower heated, a bucket, and it falls down on you, or you go out in the ocean and then just rinse off. He would catch fish from the times he was a little white spearfish. you find other ways. Like my son-in-law goes out, he does these tournaments for ahi fishing, and he'll get a 300-pound ahi. They all go back to the house, clean the whole thing, wrap it, and take freezers to all the family. So everybody has fresh ahi. It's different. You wouldn't see that. I lived in Dallas, and I don't think I even knew my neighbors. Everybody also watches out for the children and takes the family things, and it's just a different way of life. And what I love is the multicultural. We have all different people from all different cultures that live there, and it's very open to other beliefs. So we'll have a Filipino big gathering, and then we'll have a Tongan event, and then we'll have a small, and then we have the things there for everybody. But they want to preserve the culture, and I think that's good. So you find a way to make it, and the family, they call it hui. The family hui's the money and goes into a pot, and then maybe they'll save up enough that one of the older children can now move out into their own house. But it's sharing like that, taking care of one another.
Right.
I love my life there, and I'm very grateful.
Yeah. That's what I'm drawn to, is the culture there. And I can definitely feel all the things that you mentioned, whenever I'm there. And
it's
so
the aloha spirit. That's
right.
what we call it. The aloha spirit. People that belong there can feel it. They can feel it.
Yeah. And I've been to, a few countries, and you're totally right. Like whenever I'm there, it just feels different, completely different. It's like a spirit or something, a magic, surrounding the island. It's something, just beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. So do you feel like that's something that, has been passed on through generations? Like, what do you think is like causing the aloha spirit, and creating that sort of culture there?
I do think it's been handed from generations. Like my husband's great-great-grandmother raising him and caring for him and teaching him Hawaiian language and Hawaiian songs and things like that. We want to maintain our culture and to be open to other possibilities. So in school, they teach Hawaiian language. And they have a choice if it's Samoan or Tongan or whatever else. They teach different languages. And I think everyone wants Hawaii to stay this beautiful place. So we're very conscious of the environment and things like that, so that our children, our grandchildren, our great-great-grandchildren will be able to know this lifestyle. And I think that it's going to still be here. And, certainly there's going to be more people, because people are finding Hawaii and moving there. And so it's a little more crowded than it used to be. But, there's still land, there's still places that you can go. And we embrace everybody. We're very happy to have such a diversity in our islands.
That's awesome. All right, Nicki. Yeah, thank you so much for being on. I really enjoyed this time we had together. Where can people find you?
They can write. My email address is Nicki, Nicki, @dswa.org. I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. That's a good place. You spell my last name Keohohou. So Nicki is my first name. I'd love to have them reach out if there's anything I can do to support you, or I do some private coaching, but not as much as I'd like to, but eventually I'll do more. So just connect with me. And remember, Hawaii time zone is 6 hours earlier than Eastern time. So please don't call me at 2 a.m.